Welcome back, guys, gals, non-binary pals, to another reading of A Starstruck Legacy. Sorry I haven't posted anything in 2 weeks. Normally I definitely podfic a lot more often, but I just had a lot of work these last 2 weeks, and so I didn't have a lot of energy for podficking or writing updates for Quirk class Thaumiel. Hopefully I can get back into the swing of things soon. For now, I'll be reading Chapter 10, Izuku Commits Identity Theft. Here's the summary. He does. Katsuki's eyes drooped with tiredness as he trudged to class. The only thing keeping him awake was the pain he felt with his legs with every step he took. Ugh, why the heck am I still so sore? He thought to himself. I think we both know the answer to that, his conscience responded. Your internship left quite the mark on you. 1 week earlier. All right, Katsuki Bakugo, the lion hero, Shishido, began. I heard you consider yourself to be quite the fighter. Heck yes I am, Katsuki proudly proclaimed. And how good of a fighter do you think you are? Only the best. The very best? The very best. All right then, here's what you're gonna do. Shishido readied himself in a pouncing position. We're gonna fight, and we're not gonna stop fighting until you land a hit on me. My schedule is open for the entire week, so we'll have plenty of time. Sound good? All right. Katsuki grinned as he jogged in place to build up sweat. But I hope you're ready for a short fight. Shishido let out a predatory growl. No, I don't think I am. With that, he lunged over to Katsuki and slashed at him with his claws. I'm impressed you managed to keep going for 2 days straight, Katsuki's conscience complimented. Though I'm pretty sure Shishido let you land that hit on him. I don't care. I don't have any more blasts to give. Katsuki inwardly groaned as he sat at his desk. Looks like someone finally beat the stubbornness out of you. If I weren't a voice in your head, I'd get Shishido a fruit basket. Blastin'... whatever. Just let me pass out on my desk. Before Katsuki could do that, however, his ears couldn't help but overhear his classmates converse. Shoji, I simply can't thank you enough for taking up the mantle of vice president on such short notice, Momo exclaimed. No thanks are necessary. I am just fulfilling my duty. Still, it's a shame Ida Bro had to leave the hero course, Kirishima lamented. What do you think happened to him? Thankfully, Momo was supplied with an answer. Well, I needn't gossip. I believe he went with Manuel for his internship, a hero stationed in Hosu. And if you consider the attacks that took place several days ago... Yeah, that makes sense, Kirishima mumbled. I guess the pressure got to his head. I feel kinda bad for him. Perhaps it's what's best for him, Shoji chimed in. The hero course isn't for everyone, and him forcing himself to stay would only be more harmful in the long run. Still, it's sad to see him go, but if he's doing better in the business course, I can't fault him. Why don't we change gears slightly? Kaminari said as he slid up to the group. On the topic of Hosu, did you guys see Midoriya on the news? I did, Momo exclaimed. I knew Midoriya's quirk was impressive, but it seems as if he's on a whole other level. Lifting up a building like that, it's so manly. Kirishima clenched his fist as a manly tear rolled down his cheek. The last line got Katsuki's attention. What the heck do you mean, Deku? Ahem. His conscience cleared his throat. Fine. What the heck do you mean Izuku lifted an entire building? You haven't seen it? It's awesome. Check it out. Kirishima pulled up a video on his phone and showed it to Katsuki. Sure enough, Izuku lifted that entire building. Upon witnessing the footage, Katsuki pushed the phone away from his face. It's whatever. Oh, I think I recognize this feeling. His conscience spoke up in a teasing voice. No, you don't. Yes, I do. It's a little funny thing called self-doubt. No, it's not. Yes, it is. And once you stop placing your value as a hero on whether or not you can one-up Izuku, you'll start to feel much better. Whatever. Just because he can lift up a building doesn't mean he's better than me. I'll show him up the first chance I get. His conscience sighed. All right. Guess you'll have to learn this lesson the hard way, but something tells me this next one's gonna be the last straw for you. Well, that's not foreboding as blast, Katsuki snarked. Izuku's first day back from internships went by rather smoothly. Since he had spent a week working on heroics, his dual-course schedule had him spend most of the day in the support lab. By the end of the day, he and his classmates had finished their assigned work a little early, so they decided to have a little fun while they waited for the bell to dismiss them. Do another one! Do another one! Mei laughed. Okay. Izuku pulled up a picture of a hero on his phone to use as reference. I have the appearance and voice of Shoto Aizawa. In an instant, Izuku disappeared in a puff of smoke and came out looking like Class 1A's homeroom teacher. It's me, Eraserhead. Izuku hobbled around like a middle-aged guy who missed his morning coffee. I'm grumpy. I only eat jelly. Cats, you're expelled. The spot-on impression sent the class into hysterics. Oh, do Power Loader, Mina requested. Sure, it's the only logical choice. Izuku dropped his order and prepared to raise a new one. I have the appearance and voice of Higari Majima. I'm Power Loader. I dug so many holes that I caused UA to sink 20 feet into the ground. That actually happened. Look it up, the real Power Loader commented as he walked by. Do All Might, Mikumo demanded. All right. I have the appearance and voice of All Might. Toshinori considered himself and All Might as separate people, which is why Izuku didn't have to use his real name. I am here, Izuku yelled with a flex of All Might's roaring muscles. My lunch consists of 12 cheeseburgers, 10 hot dogs, and 50 chicken wings. In the teacher's lounge, Toshinori couldn't help but feel like someone was grossly misrepresenting his image. He managed to push that thought aside as he returned to his meal of 12 cheeseburgers, 10 hot dogs, and 51 chicken wings. Do Mikumo! Mina pointed eagerly at her friend. Okay. I have the appearance and voice of Mikumo Akutani. Hi, I'm Akutani. Sometimes I think about drinking volatile chemicals, but it's no big deal. It's not my fault pesticides taste so good, Mikumo lazily defended. Before the group could continue, the final bell rang and signaled the end of classes. All right, see you guys tomorrow, Izuku said as he threw his backpack over his shoulder and strolled out of the lab. As Izuku turned the corner to the train station, wondering how his mom's coffee date with Kathleen was going, he failed to notice a small purple portal appear from under him and swallow him whole. Ow, where am I? He said as he fell into a dimly lit room with no noticeable exits. Do not fear, said a finely dressed man made of purple mist as he stepped through a portal of similar color. You have done an exemplary job serving as a spy for our villainous organization, Akutani, but we have a new assignment for you. Akutani? Izuku scratched his head in confusion, only to realize it felt longer and bushier than usual. His mind immediately filled in the blanks. He had forgotten to revoke the order that made him look and sound like Mikumo and was now being mistaken for the teenager. But that wasn't even the weirdest part. Mikumo had apparently been a spy for a villainous organization the whole time? Izuku wished he knew which one, but he had never seen this purple mist man in his entire life. Either way, the moment he was free, he would be reporting this. Now, as for your mission, the mist man continued, your task is to infiltrate the Shia Hisaikai as one of their own. You are on the lookout for this man. He handed Izuku a picture of a purple-haired man with red and yellow plague mask. His name is Kai Chizuki, also known as Overhaul, which subsequently is the name of his quirk. It allows him to disassemble and reassemble matter at a subatomic level, so I'd advise you to avoid direct contact with him. All you have to do is remove his mask and lure him out of the base. The boss will take it from there. With your quirk, it should be a simple task. Izuku suddenly realized he didn't know what Mikumo's quirk was. It never came up during casual conversation, so it very much would not be a simple task for him. Any questions? No. Alright, good luck. Before Izuku could protest, he was dropped through another portal and landed on a couch in another room he didn't recognize. Guys, what do I do? Izuku asked the vestiges for advice. Get out of there! Banjo yelled. Call Toshi, Nana advised. Ask Google, En instructed. Stay calm, Ninth, Yoichi soothed. Give the Yakuza a full frontal lobotomy, Kodo commanded. Guys, not all at once, Izuku mentally yelled through the voices. But Banjo's right. I'm not ready to get involved with the Shia Hisaikai, so I should leave. See? I have some good ideas sometimes, Banjo said, much to the reluctance of the other vestiges. I am in the Midoriya household, Izuku ordered. No! New Order yelled. What? Why can't I teleport? Izuku began to panic. One must know where they are in order to travel to where they are not, Hikage explained. It's like Google Maps. They can't guide you to your destination if they can't pinpoint your position, Yoichi clarified. Okay, fine. Time for Plan B. Izuku reached into his pocket. Give the Yakuza a full frontal lobotomy? Kudo asked. No, that's plan D. I'm calling All Might. Just as soon as I can find my phone. He dug through both his pockets and his backpack, only to come up short. Shoot! I left my phone at the support lab! How the heck do you do that? I thought teenagers never forgot their phones, En commented, exasperatedly. I don't know. I just forgot. Izuku paused and took a few deep breaths to calm himself. But it's fine. I can handle this. I'll just play along until I can find an exit. In that case, you'd be the second holder of One for All to join the Yakuza, Banjo chuckled. I was the first, Bruce clarified. At that moment, a door swung open, and in walked a man Izuku recognized as Kai Chisaki. Alright, you're here for the job opening, he said as he sat on the couch in front of Izuku. Yes, I am, Izuku nodded. Mikumo Akatani is my name. My real name, not my fake name, in case you were wondering. I'm sure you'll find me to be a great candidate. I know everything there is to know about the Yakuza. Uh-huh. Chisaki peered at a clipboard full of interview questions. So, starting out, what makes you think you're qualified for this job? Since Izuku knew everything there was to know about the Yakuza, including some of the more unsavory details, he pretty much aced the interview, and Chisaki hired him on the spot. It's great to have you on board, Akatani. I'd shake your hand, but physical contact genuinely repulses me. Chisaki gave a full belly laugh, which Izuku awkwardly returned. Now your first assignment will be a simple patrol of the compound. He handed Izuku a list of names and faces. Here are your co-workers. If you see anyone sneaking around who's not them, kill them on sight. Got that? Yes, sir, Overhaul, sir. Izuku nodded, secretly praying he wouldn't have to kill anyone. Good, now get going. I have to work on my personal project. Chisaki opened the door and Izuku jogged out. As Izuku made his way around the Yakuza compound, he quickly realized two things. He was at least 15 floors underground, though it could be more, and due to a member's quirk, the layout of the compound could shift at any moment, making it difficult for Izuku to plot out a map in his head. He eventually decided to wing it and go up any stairs he happened to come across in hopes that it would lead him to the top floor. That strategy seemed to work well for him, as he managed to make his way up 5 floors in only a few minutes. But before he could make it 6, he felt a strong hand grab his shoulder and spin him around. Hey, you're the new guy, grunted a bald man wearing a medical mask. Izuku recognized him from the list Chisaki gave as Yu Hojo. Yeah? Izuku nodded as inconspicuously as he could. Look at him, he looks like a frickin' wimp, snickered a sleazy-looking guy with blonde hair who Izuku recognized as Toyo Setsuna. Fresh meat, hissed a creepy-looking man with a white sack covering his head, save for 2 eye holes. Soramitsu Tabe, if Izuku remembered correctly. Izuku gulped at their presence. He knew they were all members of the 8 Bullets, the Shie Hasaikai's most valuable assets. It's nice to meet you all? I'll say, Hojo grinned behind his mask, but it'll be even better when we're through with you. He grabbed Izuku by the arm and started dragging him off. What are you guys doing? It's a little something we do to welcome the new members of the organization. Setsuno grinned cockily. Hope you're up for a little hazing, new guy. Hazing? You mean like the kind they do in college fraternities? Yeah, except we don't hold back, Hojo chuckled. This is gonna be delicious, Tabe exclaimed. Izuku mentally groaned, and he just decided to play along until they got bored of him. Then he could escape. Hopefully the Yakuza weren't all made of sadists. The group stopped at an inconspicuous-looking door, and Hojo threw it open. The inside was mostly unremarkable, just a room filled with various items and devices, no doubt used for new guy hazings in the past. However, the gaping hole in the corner was something to take note of. That thing looked deep. The first one's an oldie but a goodie. Setsuna reached behind his back and pulled out 3 wooden paddling sticks. We'll start with about 20 minutes of this, then we'll get to the good stuff. He handed a paddle to each of his partners, and they menacingly walked over to Izuku, who was not looking forward to this whole hazing thing. I have increased durability, he muttered under his breath. He was thankful he had only used 2 out of 3 orders up until that point. When the trio swung their paddles at Izuku, they were all surprised to see them shatter upon impact. What the heck? Hojo exclaimed. Damn faulty weapons. Setsuna threw the paddle behind his shoulder. Mine! Tabe ran over to the discarded paddle and shoved it in his mouth. Whatever. Time for the real deal. Setsuna reached under the table and pulled out a tattoo needle. Hojo, seemingly getting the message, grabbed Izuku by the arm and held it down on a nearby table. Don't worry, this'll only hurt a lot. They all laughed as he slowly lowered the needle down onto Izuku's squirming arm. If any ink touches me, a huge shockwave will release from my body, Izuku whispered as quietly as he could. What was that, punk? Hojo asked. But before he could receive an answer, the needle made contact with Izuku's skin for 1,000th of a second, causing the 3 Yakuza thugs to get launched back and slammed into the wall. Gah! What the heck is your quirk? Setsuna yelled as he got up and cracked his back. Well, it's, you know what? Don't care. He presented a handful of Carolina Reapers to Izuku. For your next haze, you're gonna eat these here peppers, or Hojo's gonna pound you into the ground. All right, Izuku said as he held up his hands in false surrender. He took the peppers and dangled them over his mouth. The 3 Yakuza thugs chuckled with anticipation, just waiting to see Izuku's mouth set ablaze. But Izuku didn't feel like giving them the satisfaction. Before he downed the peppers, he muttered to himself, My entire body has increased spice tolerance. He took a huge bite out of multiple peppers at once and slowly chewed them, pretending to savor the taste. Oh, these are delicious. Are these locally grown? They taste so much better than the store-bought ones. What the? Gimme that! Setsuna snatched the uneaten peppers from Izuku's hands and handed them to his hungry-looking coworker. Tabe, check if they're duds. Food! He shoved the peppers into his mouth and devoured them almost instantly. Several seconds later, Tabe fell to the floor and screamed out in agony as his eyes turned red and began to water. Gah! Spicy! He immediately dashed out of the room to find the nearest cold item to sink his teeth into, leaving 2 very frustrated Yakuza thugs. Alright, looks like we got a funny guy here, Setsuna said as he and Hojo backed Izuku into a corner. You know what we do to funny guys, Hojo? We give him the 5-story drop, Hojo responded as he grabbed Izuku by his collar and dangled him over the gaping hole in the floor. Don't worry, boss will put you right back together. Still's gonna hurt like heck, though, Setsuna said before he broke out into harsh laughter. Any last words? Izuku peered down the 5-story drop with indifference in his eyes. Not really. I guess I'm just kinda screwed. Works for us. Hojo let go of Izuku, who gave his best fake scream to try and sell the peril they thought he was in. Thankfully, he was able to activate float before he hit the ground. Finally, I thought they'd never leave me alone, Izuku said to himself as he took note of his surroundings. The first thing he noticed was that he landed in some kind of dark, decrepit hallway, the kind that gave off a vibe that deterred away unwanted guests. At one end of the hallway was a staircase, but on the other was a single door. Izuku's curiosity got the better of him, and he went for the door. He turned the knob, only to discover it was locked. Izuku shrugged and was about to turn away when he suddenly heard a faint sniffle from the other side. He slowly pressed his ear to the door and could barely make out the sound of a little girl weeping. His heroic instincts immediately took over, and he charged up 5% of One for All to kick down the door. On the other side, he was met with a sight he didn't expect to see. A child's bedroom that was stereotypically girly in every sense of the word. The wall, floor, bedsheets, blankets, and pillows were all bright pink, and all sorts of dolls were scattered across the floor. But Izuku wasn't focused on any of that. What caught his attention was the small girl curled up in the center of the bed, very obviously crying. At the sound of the doors creaking, the girl turned to look at Izuku and stared with abject horror in her eyes. Who are you? The girl meekly asked. Are you here to hurt me? No, of course not, Izuku answered softly. He didn't know the girl's full situation, but she seemed to be in a state of emotional distress. His approach required caution. Are you okay? The girl silently stared at him for a few seconds, unsure of how to respond. Eventually, she settled with a simple headshake as tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. A pit of dread welled up in Izuku's stomach. The tattered hospital gown combined with the bandages on her arms did not paint a good picture of her situation. Did they hurt you? The girl silently nodded, and a feeling of rage towards the Shie Hasaikai bubbled up inside him. But Izuku pushed those feelings down for the time being. Right now, he had a child to save. Izuku dropped his Mikumo disguise and delivered a soft, reassuring smile to the girl. Don't worry. It'll be all right. I'm a hero. I'll get you out of here. You will? The girl's eyes widened, the slightest bit of hope shining through. I will. I promise. Izuku walked over to the bed and extended an open hand towards the girl. My name's Izuku Midoriya. What's yours? The girl flinched back at the extended hand, but still answered the question. Eri. Before Izuku could respond, danger sense blared like a klaxon bell in his head. Whipping his head around, he was met with Kai Chisaki standing under the doorframe, his narrow glare portraying a silent rage. Who are you? Chisaki asked coldly. Doesn't matter, Izuku answered in a similar tone. What have you been doing to this girl? You mean Eri? Chisaki's eyes landed on the girl in question, who instinctively hid behind Izuku. I was only doing what was required to rid the world of the disease we call Quirks. Izuku clenched his fist as green lightning traveled up his arm. And what does that entail? The girl was born with a curse, a burden, one that I took upon myself to fashion into something useful. He pulled out a gun and pointed at Izuku, who didn't even flinch. I lost count of how many times I had to take apart that girl and put her back together, but it was all worth it. Without it, I wouldn't have the cure I searched for my entire life. Chisaki pulled the trigger, and a loud bang sounded across the room. The Yakuza leader looked up, expecting to see a bullet lodged in Izuku's forehead, but was instead met with the boy holding the bullet between his fingers and thumb, having caught it midair. With little effort, Izuku crushed the bullet into dust. Chisaki instinctively shuddered as he took a step back, but before Izuku did anything else to the Yakuza boss, he placed a hand on Eri's forehead and said, Eri has increased durability. He was prepared for things to get violent. Not wanting to wait for Izuku to make his move, Chisaki placed his hands on the wall and the floor shifted into dozens of spikes that all launched at the hero. Izuku wasn't deterred, however. Turning up One for All to 100%, a wave of his hand was all it took to shatter the spikes in front of him. He then took a single step forward, which caused the entire compound to shake on its foundation. Chisaki took another step back as his eyes widened in horror. What do you think you... Izuku didn't let him get another word in. Faster than the bullet he just caught, he zipped over to Chisaki, reeled back his fist, and with a yell of, Detroit Smash! He uppercutted the Yakuza boss hundreds of feet into the air, knocking his mask clean off. Chisaki flew straight through several floors above him, his body breaking the concrete floors and ceilings he made contact with. By the time he stopped ascending, he was at least 3 stories above ground, having been launched out of the Yakuza compound entirely. But before Chisaki could make his descent, which would have been no doubt fatal, a gray sludge burst from his mouth and quickly enveloped him. Within a few seconds, he had completely vanished. Izuku looked up at the series of holes Chisaki's body has made. There he saw dozens of Yakuza members staring down at him through said holes. Hey, that guy just beat up the boss! One of them yelled. Awesome, let's fight! A muscular guy, Izuku recognized as Rappa, exclaimed as he jumped down to Izuku's level. The rest of the Yakuza seemingly followed suit as they funneled downstairs to try and avenge their defeated boss. Izuku considered himself lucky that he was technically on private property and, therefore, legally allowed to use his quirk. Not like that would have stopped him. A single 100% finger flick was all it took to knock back a dozen criminals. A single stomp of his foot made 20 men lose their footing. A single clap of his hand released a devastating shockwave that penetrated even the toughest defenses. Izuku knew he couldn't do much more than this at 100%, lest he risk accidentally killing someone, but taking on each member one by one would prove too time-consuming. He just wished there was a faster way to deal with everyone. Suddenly, Izuku felt his energy began to leave him as a yellow trail flowed from him to a man he recognized as Rikaya Katsukame. Ha! You might be a powerhouse, but what are you gonna do once my quirk drains your stamina? I have Rikaya Katsukame's quirk, Izuku stated. He felt a new ability well up inside him, one that was no doubt boosted by One for All. Giving in to the quirk's instincts, he began sucking the stamina from every Yakuza member in his vicinity. Within seconds, they all were left collapsed on the ground, exhausted and unmoving. Heh, that's not fair, Rappa said tiredly. We were supposed to fight. Izuku rolled his eyes as he walked up to Rappa and tapped his foot to the villain's face in what barely constituted as a kick. There, I win. He then reached into Rappa's pocket and pulled out his phone. As he waited for the number he dialed to pick up, he dropped Aries' durability order and raised a new one. "I have the voice of Kendo Rappa." When the line picked up, Izuku said in Rappa's voice, "Hello? Is this the police? I'm Kendo Rappa. I'm a member of the Shia Hisaikai. Please come and arrest all of us." After he hung up, he dropped the order and handed Rappa his phone back. Leaving the muscular man to soak in his loss, Izuku made his way back to Aries' room, where the girl was still sitting on her bed, wide-eyed from what had just occurred. He kneeled down to her level and said with a smile, "Don't worry, Aries. It'll be okay. I'm here. I promise those bad men will never hurt you again." As Aries teared up and Izuku brought her into the first warm hug the girl had had since she was 3, he couldn't help but wonder what happened to Chisaki. He had no idea what the deal was with that gray sludge, but he hoped it meant he would never see that man again. All for One smiled as the gray sludge cleared and Chisaki warped into his dimly lit lair. It seemed as if Akatani had done his job well. "What happened? Where am I?" Chisaki said to no one in particular. As much as All for One treasured those initial moments of confusion from the people he warped into his lair, he figured he should get a move on already. "Kai Chisaki." All for One stood up and slowly approached the Yakuza leader. "I've heard quite a few things about you, most of which concerning your quirk." "Well, what about my quirk?" "Oh, not much. Just that it can rearrange matter on a subatomic level, and wouldn't you believe it, that's a highly sought-after ability, and that's why you're here." With a swift chop, plus a few dozen speed quirks, All for One sliced Chisaki's hands clean off. As the man screamed in bloody agony, All for One placed his hand on Chisaki's forehead and stole the quirk for himself. With Overhaul now in his possession, All for One felt eager to try a test run. He placed all 5 fingers on Chisaki's body, and it exploded into a bloody mess that splattered across the entire room. All for One groaned internally. The blood got all over his suit, but that mattered very little in the grand scheme of things, for the best part was just about to commence. Taking off his mask, All for One placed a hand on his face and activated Overhaul. For a split second he ceased to be, having exploded in a similar manner as Chisaki, but one more split second later he reformed, now looking like he had back when he was in his prime. His hair, eyes, lungs, and entire body felt as young as the day he killed Nana Shimura. For the first time in what seemed like forever, All for One took a deep breath, savoring the evil aroma that filled his lair. Though it could always be eviler, he thought about buying some evil-scented candles from eBay. As if his day couldn't get any better, he heard a knock at the door. "You may enter," he said, and in walked the spy with the perception-blocking quirk, the same one he sent to watch Star and Stripe for any potential ways he could get the jump on her. He wore a red ski mask and an equally red suit and tie. "Ah, good to see you, spy. What have you discovered?" "Exactly the kind of dirt you were looking for," the spy replied in a French accent as he presented a photo to All for One. It was a picture of Star and Stripe in casual clothing sitting at a table in a coffee shop. Sitting next to her was a short, stout, green-haired woman. They were presumably on some kind of coffee date. "What do you know about this other woman?" All for One asked. The spy hummed. "I listened in on their conversation and found out a few things. Her name is Izuku Midoriya. She has a son named Izuku. Her favorite coffee is—" "All right, that's all I needed to hear. Get out." All for One interrupted as he shooed the spy out of his room. When All for One was alone, he took another look at the photo in his hands and grinned sinisterly. Izuku Midoriya, mother of Izuku Midoriya, the same boy who won the sports festival and inherited 2 of the most powerful quirks in existence. He pressed a button on his intercom. "Doctor, prepare those 7 Nomu in my basement. It's time for me to make a move." Perhaps All for One was less screwed than he initially thought. "Higher, Mama, higher!" Izuku stared with a melancholic smile at the sight of his mom pushing his new sister on the swing set. The only sounds were the soft blowing of the wind contrasting with the squeaking of the swings as Eri was swung up and down, a soft giggle escaping her lips every now and then. "Hello there, young Midoriya," Toshinori greeted as he sat next to his protege. His eyes came upon the sight Izuku was watching, and he gave a soft smile. "It seems as if young Eri has integrated quite nicely into your family." "Yeah, she has." Izuku smiled and nodded, though there was something off about his tone. "You did a good thing, saving her from those Yakuza thugs." "Yeah, I know. She was in a really bad place, both physically and mentally, and even though I promised to help her the best I could, Izuku let out a remorseful sigh. I still feel bad for what I did to her. The feeling of concern rose in Toshinori's chest. What did you do to her? He asked cautiously. They did horrible things to her in there, All Might. Things no child should ever have to experience. I asked her if she wanted to forget all of it, and she said yes, so I used New Order to remove her worst memories of that place. She still remembers she was raised by the Yakuza and that I saved her, but the details are a cloudy haze in her mind. The pair remained silent for a long time after Izuku's explanation. Toshinori took the time to truly digest what he had just heard. Eventually, though, he spoke up. While I can't deny there are some moral quandaries to what you just did, I still think it was a good thing to do. That girl has been through so much at such a young age, and she deserves to have a normal childhood. Yeah, Izuku nodded. He knew what he did technically fell into a morally gray area, and he would probably never do something like that again, but looking at his sister's wide, cheerful smile, he knew it was all worth it. And that's the end of chapter 10. I hope you liked it. I really liked this chapter. The fact that Izuku just speedruns getting Eri, uses all the tricks and hacks he can get to get her to smile as quickly as possible. So I really like this. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you'll be back for chapter 11. That'll be out sometime soon, I hope. Thank you so much for listening. Patch out.